Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Thomas Paine, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. These men spoke up for what they thought was right. From their courage came such documents as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. From their willingness to speak what was sometimes unpopular but right, we enjoy such liberties as freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms, and freedom of religion. There are those who still wish to oppress our freedoms, and there are still patriots willing to stand up and defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Men like Zeb Bell, who honor our founding fathers and what they stood for. It's now time for Zeb at the ranch, speaking up and defending your freedoms. Brought to you by Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers and all of the other great advertisers on the program. And now, Zeb Bell.
A story of greed and using people. A story of power and money. A story of lying and deception. However, the American news media, including our own Times News, too gutless to report on it. What's happened to integrity? Here comes Kate Smith and God Bless America, followed by a Patriot with our Pledge of Allegiance on a Wednesday. Good morning, good morning. And a good morning to you and yours. I'm Zeb Bell on this Wednesday morning, October 28th already. My, oh my, where did the month go? And it just seems like yesterday I was celebrating a birthday, and that was a month ago now. Hey, brought to you by your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you with the best in tires and service, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. And, of course, also Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Right now, let's go to the phone line and have our Pledge of Allegiance by a Patriot. Good morning.
Good morning, Zeb. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless you, man. Thank you so much. Great way to start off the program. And right now we're going to head for the weather forecast. And the weather brought to you and I by K&R Rental. Absolutely the nicest of people. Roger and the crew are over there early in the morning. They open the doors, I think, about 7 o'clock, serving you with all the best of tools and equipment that you might need to finish any kind of a construction project or whatever. I mean, they've got equipment for kind of winterizing your gardens all the way to you name it. All the tools and equipment to blow out those sprinkler systems and pipes, everything at K&R Rental. Please get a hold of them today. If you have questions, call them 678-3122. K&R Rental. And right now, here's Gina with the forecast.
Still on a slight warming trend as we make our way towards the weekend, and here's a look at your weather forecast for today. We are expecting sunny skies, a little bit of a breeze out of the west at about 5 miles an hour, looking at a high of 56. Tonight, mostly clear, low of 26. Tomorrow, sunny and 61 with an overnight low of 27. Looks like 67 by Friday. Mostly clear for Friday night with a low of 32. And then for the weekend, Saturday, sunny and 58 and 63 for Sunday. That's a look at your weather for Zeb at the range.
I love it. Thank you very much. And the weather brought to you by K&R Rental at 256 South 600 west of Hayburn, right there on the Burley-Paul Highway. Please get a hold of them today for any and all the tools and equipment you need for long and short-term rental. K&R Rental. The number again, 678-3122. Want to also take some time right here before we take our caller to give a great big shout-out to some people. Their service is impeccable. Yesterday, Jared stopped by from Ramsey Heating and Electric at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley, did a little fix-up and repair for us, and I'll tell you what, they have and can do all your heating, cooling, and electrical needs. These are people that have been in business almost 7 decades serving this area, and believe me, all you have to do is either call 678-0459 or stop in. They're open 7:30 to 5 Monday through Friday. Ramsey Heating and Electric. You stop in and see the best today at Ramsey Heating and Electric. Want to remind you, too, boy, we're just days away. Go vote. We, the people, have the civic obligation to choose our leadership. Be sure and vote for the candidate of your choice on November 3rd. This message paid by the Re-elect District 27 Representative Fred Wood Committee. Steve Westfall, Treasurer. Absolutely. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Red. It's another beautiful day in the neighborhood.
It is at that.
To you and to your family.
I appreciate that, Keith. What's going on in your world?
Well, my dad used to tell me, listen to your elders. You know, they've been around for a while, so maybe you should listen to them. I think that's good advice to a certain degree. Don't you?
To a degree.
Yeah. Well, some of these old senators and stuff we got, we have to put a question mark on them.
That's why I said what I said.
A small country in this world called New Zealand, and they only have like 5 million people in the whole country, but they've only had 25 COVID deaths. What are we doing wrong?
I'm not going to say that we're doing anything wrong. I am not, first of all, I want to say this, and I think you'll respect it. I am not an expert on any virus, especially this COVID-19 virus. I am not an expert as to what should be done, has been done, as far as what New Zealand did versus what we're doing here in this country. I'm not an expert on that. All I'm going to say is this. A virus is a virus, and a virus is not going to go away. It may mutate into other forms, but you're not all of a sudden going to take a fly swatter and you're going to hit it and say, you're dead, you're gone, you're out of here. That doesn't happen. And I'm a little bit sick and tired of some of the politicals like Biden and some of his people saying, well, if I was the president of the United States, we wouldn't have coronavirus. COVID-19 would be whipped. Well, first of all, that's a stupid and very selfish statement because it's not true.
Well, let's look at it this way. New Zealand was one of the very first countries to shut down anybody coming in, period, anybody.
Yeah.
And President Trump shut down our country, travel from China right away as soon as we knew we had a problem. How much quicker could you do something?
Yeah, and there's something else too, Keith, and I'm not going to take a lot of time on this morning, but Dr. Fauci and other so-called scientists that are leaders of their field, if you'll remember correctly, Fauci came out and said that mask wearing was not going to help, mask wearing was not mandatory, he didn't see the great benefit in it, and they kept changing their stories, but who really evolved to take all the blame for the statements that were made by others that are so-called scientists and professionals? It was Donald Trump, our president. He always seemed to be the whipping boy for a transition of ideas and thoughts on COVID-19.
Yeah, and we can't get the word out of the truth of this country because the news media is stopping us. Zeb, I know every day when you close out your program, you wish it was like the way it used to be, and I'm going to leave you now, but CBS and the rest of them mess up everything I said.
That's exactly right. I have no faith, and I'm going to be talking about that in just a few minutes about the general news media. Keith, God bless you. You're always there in the morning, and I appreciate it. I got to run and pay some bills. Thank you very, very much.
You have a wonderful day.
I will, sir. Thank you. Don't forget Denny's Restaurant. Oh, never forget Denny's Restaurant at 611 North Overland in Burley. Oh, yes, and another location that Thomas has at 291 Pole Line Road in Twin Falls. We're talking the very best of menu choices for breakfast and lunch and dinner and all the desserts. Your friends and neighbors and family, everybody's going to enjoy a great eating experience with people that really care about service to you. Denny's Restaurant. It is America's Diner. 611 North Overland in Burley. You stop in and see those great, great people today. By the by, don't forget Clark Kaufman asked for your vote to re-elect him as Idaho State Representative, District Seat 25B. Even more, Clark wants you to get out and exercise your right to vote. Clark Kaufman has served Idaho well since 2012, serving you, serving all of Idaho. In order to logically keep our voices heard, Clark encourages you to vote yes on the constitutional amendment, changing the language to simply require the legislature to consist of 35 districts. So, let's all do our part. Get out and vote, paid for by the committee to re-elect Clark Kaufman for House Seat 25B. Debbie Kaufman, Treasurer. Absolutely. Let me see what else have I got cooking here that I need to get on real quick. Dino Septic Service, and then we're going to take some more calls. I want to talk to you about the interview that was on television last night with Tony Bobulinski. Now, in my opening remarks, I made comments and references to the news media not doing their job, including our own Times News. If you'll pick up this morning's edition of the Times News and read it and go through carefully, and you can prove me wrong, of which I make mistakes like everybody else does, and prove me wrong and find a story about that Biden scandal that is getting bigger and larger and growing like a cancer every day. Prove me wrong, please. I can't find anything in that illustrious Times News, but they're not the only ones. They're not the only ones. Hardly anyone in the media is covering the story, but they are covering for the Bidens. Give me a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Don't forget our friends at Dino Septic Service. You know, you don't want to be out there pumping a septic tank. I mean, you got better things you want to do, and it's not a job that you're going to really enjoy. But Dino Septic Service, that's what they do. They pump out septic tanks, and they take care of all the liquid waste removal, and they clean all the sewer and sink drain lines, and they've got the best of backhoe services, water and sewer lines installed. The list goes on. And they cover just doggone near all of southern Idaho. I mean, they're all over. All you need to do to call and give them on the schedule so they can help serve you. Dino Septic Service at 436-6526 or 678-1638, and in Twin Falls, 735-8281. Work with the best. Dino's Septic Service. Absolutely. One other quick note, and then I'll take some more of your calls. Please, I want to hear what you have to say about this so-called kind of a Biden gate. That's what I'm going to call this story, Biden gate. And I want to hear what your thoughts are. Real quick, I want to remind you about the Bennett Boys Auction Service. They're going to have a sale this coming Saturday, October 31st, and it's going to be at 10 a.m. over in Buell at 3813 North, 1600 East. Look for the signs. Lunch by the Cook Shack. They're going to have vehicles like an 85 Chevy Silverado, 1-ton flatbed truck. They're going to have an '84 LeSabre Buick. They're going to have loaders and tractors. They're going to have an old barn with lots of old barn wood. Ooh, a lot of people are interested in that. Mobile home, miscellaneous, all of this starting at 10 a.m. this coming Saturday, the 31st, in Buell. Look for the signs, and the sale is managed by at Bennett Boys Auction Service. It's the Isidro Cortez Retirement Sale over in Buell. The Bennett Boys Auction Service. No sale too big, no sale too small. The Bennett Boys, they sell them all. I am going to be very honest with you folks about what I did and what I saw last night. I sat spellbound, and I mean that for the interview on Tucker Carlson with Tony Bobulinski. Now, let's set the record on an even keel here before we get too deep in the grass. Number one, Tony Bobulinski is a man that served our country. He was a man that was honorably discharged and a man that was very highly thought of in his military career. Bobulinski is also a man that has been highly respected in his personal career as an investment broker and also marketing agent. I'm going to use those terms. Someone might use different terms. But he's been an honest straight shooter. And if body language and eye contact and direct speech mean anything, if you watch someone, Bobulinski was telling the truth. He was very specific about dates and times and places when he was around or met with the Biden family. Joe Biden himself personally, Biden's brother Jim, and of course Hunter Biden and others that were being involved in a business transaction. And I'm noticing a little fuzz on the line. Sean, are we getting that same problem back again, or what's going on over there?
I'm not hearing it.
I'm getting it occasionally on my headset, so if you check that out. There is nothing to gain for Bobulinski. Please, I'd like somebody to tell me what it could possibly be. Is he trying to extort someone for money? Is he trying to get back or get even at someone? No. He has nothing to gain for coming forward on this story other than clearing his name because the Bidens and people like Adam Schiff, a most repugnant politician in America, well, at least one of them, have stated that Bobulinski was a part of Russian misinformation. There was one point of the interview last night. I hope you watched it. When they were talking about Jim Biden and a conversation that Bobulinski had with Jim Biden, and he asked the question, and I'm paraphrasing, aren't you, and on behalf of the Biden family, Joe, Hunter, etc., aren't you a little worried about some of these business dealings if Joe is going to run again for public office? And Jim Biden replied to him, it's plausible deniability. Let me repeat those words. Plausible deniability. In other words, if we're cornered and asked about this, we will lie and deny. And yet the news media, as of this morning, and I'm going to stick my neck out and say almost 97% or more of the media not touching this story because they are cowardly and because they're in bed with getting Donald Trump kicked out of the presidency and putting in a Democrat, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Yes, he not only commented on it, he had paperwork, showing the emails and the information so you could see it.
That's right.
I felt it was an excellent commentary And I think that the news media is nothing but corrupt and dishonest. It's crazy they have not picked up on it and followed through. They followed through on rumors on Trump, but they will not take facts and stuff on Biden.
Absolutely well stated. No, Jerry, I totally agree with what you said, and you have kind of summed up the whole story. The news media in the tank, I mean, they are tipped over backwards in favor of misusing or not using at all this story to support Biden for his presidential run. It's absolutely sickening in a country that has always prided itself on freedom and honesty and integrity, and the news media in this country are dirt.
Well, they're failing the country. They are a failed system, a rotten system, and a disgusting system, and it's just not right.
I agree.
They should be prosecuted for every lie they put out and fined probably $500,000 or maybe a couple million for everyone.
I couldn't agree more. Jerry, it's so good to hear you. You sound better this morning. God bless you, man. I got to run and do a commercial. Thank you so much.
May the Lord bless you and your whole audience.
I appreciate it, Jerry. I'd like more people to call on this. This is a big deal. And Jerry just kind of gave a summation on that a moment ago. When anything about Trump that could possibly be blown out of proportion happened or didn't happen, the likes of Adam Schiff and the Democratic Party and the news media, they were like rabid dogs, biting and tearing and going after the story to try to show something corrupt about President Trump. But in this case, they're silent. They're not saying or doing anything. And it just shows you that the media is a protection blanket for the Biden family. Imagine, folks, come on, in just a matter of a couple of days, hours, the election is going to take place. And imagine that the likes of illegality and deceit and money laundering and whatever else you want to call the story of Biden's and working with other countries to gain financial gain, that man could be the president of the United States. And he could be easily manipulated by other countries in the world because of the graft and corruption that he and his family were involved in. If that doesn't bother you, our country has gone to hell. Don't forget, vote November 3rd for an Idaho representative that has worked very hard to help preserve and enhance our agricultural industry, protect our resources, and stand firm for family values. I'm talking about Lori Likely, State Representative, District 25A. Lori knows what's important for Idaho to grow and prosper, and she wants your vote November 3rd. Lori Likely for District 25A, paid for Likely for Idaho, Bill Likely, Treasurer. Hey, don't forget every Monday we have a dozen cookies to give away thanks to our friends at Sophie's Chatterbox at 530 East Street in Rupert, right on the square. What a bakery. What a restaurant. What great cookies from Sophie's Chatterbox. 8:30 on Monday mornings. You be sure and tune in, and you might be the lucky winner. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning again. I watched that interview very carefully to see if I could find a flaw in it, and I couldn't. You know, Bobulinski was between a rock and a hard place, in the sense that if they just let things ride as they are, when they come unglued, he would be part of the machine that caused it. And so when he met with them and said, hey, we need to come clean on this, to get it cleaned up, because my reputation is on the line and so is yours, and they just poo-pooed it away. And so he decided that he would come clean and tell the whole thing. Now, he has a family, and I imagine he agonized a lot over that before he decided, I'm going to tell the truth, and I'm going to tell them everything I know. But gosh darn it, it's like you locking yourself in a closet and confessing to all of your sins and everything, and there's nobody there to listen to you.
Well, I just don't understand. Keith, I don't understand, and you're a little bit older than I am, but not that much. And never in my lifetime, no, wait a minute, never in my lifetime, ever, have I heard on news reports illegalities that were finger-pointing, and the possibility that if those finger-pointing stories came true, it would have a devastating effect on a great big presidential election, which this story is. You would think that the news media, whether it's ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, it doesn't make any difference. They would have investigative reporters that would be studying all the ins and outs of Bobulinski and the ties to the Bidens and everything as a free press in America's free society. They are not doing this. They are absolutely hiding, doing any investigating on the story whatsoever, and the only one that is doing it, and believe me, I think his life is a little precarious right now, Tucker Carlson and Fox News.
Yeah, and Tucker did a very good job of interviewing him. He didn't try to antagonize him or anything. He was a good listener and only put input when he thought it was necessary.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. But I look at the body language, and, you can tell a lot by watching a person speak and what they do with their eyes. If their eyes are darting all over the place, and if they're kind of mumbly-pumbly with their speech and they fall over certain words or they're searching for words, etc. This man was extremely direct, and he gave specific dates, times, places, people, contexts, conversations, etc. And I'm telling you, if the news media does not follow up on this, this is a major crime to the freedom of this country.
Amen, brother, and because it is so important to get the story out, but our news media, I don't know how they can shut up so many people.
Well, I don't either, but I picked up the Times News this morning, and when it came finally, and I looked at their front page, and they had a story about a knifing on the front page. They had a story about a panel urging earlier screenings on the front page, and then they had a great big story, 116 years of delivering local news, the Times News. I went to page 2, didn't find anything. I went on all the way through the first section, which encompassed 12 pages of nothing about this story that would absolutely tip the scales of justice and fair play in this election. Nobody seems to want to cover it because they do not like Donald Trump, and they do not want to stop or hinder Biden from taking over the White House.
The problem that you have with Times News, I don't take the paper either, but I get the watered-down version of it in Burley. But anyway, the problem is the guy that scans all these stories before he allows them to be printed.
Well, I'm just saying that...
So what good is a reporter to go out and get the facts when he's going to put what he wants in?
Well, yeah, but I don't think the reporters are going out and trying to find out any facts or what possibly might even be fiction. When a story comes across a news desk, whether it's on a large national scale or whether it's on a local basis, doesn't make any difference. And you've got finger pointing and allegations. The fact is, journalists should go out and find out really the truth and the negativity, the honesty or the lies. That's the job of a journalist. But to cover the story up and not do anything, that's a crime.
Yeah. But some of these reporters or so-called journalists, they do the job they're supposed to do, but they're in fear of losing their job.
Oh, I can't agree more. Yeah, there's a lot of that, and we could go chapter and verse on a lot of circumstances, etc. Keith, got to run. Thank you so much for your call back. Appreciate it.
Toodaloo.
All right, don't forget, vote November 3rd, and be sure to vote yes for the levy increase for the Rock Creek Fire District. They are always there to serve us. Now let's help them. Vote yes for the Rock Creek Fire District levy, paid for by the Rock Creek Firefighters Association. One more quick note here, folks, before we go any further, and I want to remind everybody about Paul Thompson. November 3rd, District 24A needs Paul Thompson in the Idaho House. Paul knows we need values established by God, fiscal responsibility, and all life matters. The right to protect ourselves and guaranteed freedom to worship and speak. A strong state education system and patients are in charge, not politicians. And above all, our Constitution is never second to anyone. Vote Paul Thompson, District 24A, paid for by Paul Thompson for Idaho, Issy Gibbs, Treasurer. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Zeb. The Democratic Party's hopes are that these people that are conducting guerrilla warfare in our cities are the ones that are going to put them in office. God help America.
You know, after what I saw happen in Philadelphia last night, I'm telling you, Tony, you're a little older than I am, but my goodness, what has happened to a country that has always looked at the scales of justice and equal opportunity for all? And then you have a case in Philadelphia where they are running rampant. Over 1,000 people turned into rioters and looters and basically emptied out a Walmart last night. And they did it because a black man, let's call it like it is, Tony, a black man was in defiance of a police order the other day, had a knife in his hand, and he was ordered to stop and drop the knife, and he kept approaching police in a very threatening manner, and they shot and killed him. What would you do, Tony, if you've given an order as a policeman and somebody is coming at you with a knife? I mean, we've got to start looking at these stories with some kind of reason and rhyme as to the police. They've got the right to protect themselves and also try to administer the law. But it seems like many of these blacks in major cities like Philadelphia, they think they're above the law.
Well, the whole problem is, in the Democratic city, the police officer has to take the first bullet before he reacts. Or in this case that you were just talking about, he has to wait till 6 inches of the knife blade is stuck in his body before he can react.
I've had it. I mean, I just do not understand how these rioters and looters can get away with it blatantly in front of TV cameras last night. They were hauling out television sets, and they had them on dollies, and they had washers and dryers, and the looting and the burning, and this is unheard of. I think that if Donald Trump is reelected, he's got to come in with an iron fist. And that iron fist has to hit groups in the nose like BLM, Black Lives Matter, and Antifa. And let these people know we're going to live in a civilized law society and not let these vermin take over these cities.
Well, when the first match was lit, the first store was hit, these people should have been crushed. But unfortunately, the Democrats look at this, well, the man was just exercising his rights of free speech. Yeah. It doesn't matter how many police officers are going to be killed.
I'm telling you, this is critical right now, Tony. It's really critical. This country and all that it stood for the plus 200 years is about ready to be tanked because of the left, liberalism, and absolute lawlessness. Hey, I need you to do me a favor. Call me after the program. It's very important I talk to you, okay?
Okay.
All right, buddy. Thank you much. Calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I mean, really, honestly, we live here in southern Idaho, and we're not immune to this idiocy. I mean, when a man, I don't care what color his skin is, is told to put down a knife because there's an altercation and someone else may get hurt, injured, and or killed, and he doesn't, and he comes out and brandishes that knife like he's going to attack and stab a policeman, doggone right he should have been and was shot. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Don't forget Barry Equipment and Rental, Sales, Service, and Parts. And they've got 3 locations serving you at 159 West Highway 30 in Burley, 465 Addison Avenue West in Twin, and the Napa location. And they've got a huge inventory of all the great big equipment you need, the Bobcats, the trenchers, the scissor lifts, all the Doosan equipment for the lift and the digging, the pushing, and the carrying. They've got excellent financing programs to buy, great lease programs, and they'll teach you how to run it in the sandbox out behind the business. That's, again, Barry Equipment and Rental, Burley, Twin Falls, and Napa. You stop in and see those good folks today. All of us should be extremely concerned about what's going on, and we're only days away from finalizing the vote on November 3rd. Days. And now they said yesterday, last evening, and again early this morning, that early voting, and I absolutely hate early voting. You're never going to convince me that we need to water down a very special day for America, and that's Election Day, by having it start like in August. 68 million people. 68 million people so far have cast their ballots, and many are now clamoring to have a redo on their ballot. And of the people I've talked to in the last couple of days, and I'm going to be talking to Representative Fred Wood later on this morning about another issue, but I'm going to mention this also. How do you go about reestablishing a redo on a ballot? How can you know, trust, or have the thought of the integrity of the voter that they're not just trying to double up on their vote? Some states are allowing this, and it's wrong. It's wrong. No vote should be allowed to be counted after November 3rd. Don't give me this garbage about, all these mail-in ballots, why we found 4 bags of them in the back of James's pickup, and he had transmission trouble and couldn't get them to the post office, and they were all dated and postmarked November 3rd. Oh, don't give me that. And don't give me voter suppression. If you knew that there was going to be a national election November 3rd of 2020, don't tell me, well, I didn't have time to go and get an ID. I just didn't have time to go and register. That is a lie, and that shows how lazy you are. Calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Give me a call. Go and vote November 3rd and vote yes for Amendment HJR 4 and leave the number of legislative districts at 35, guaranteeing that our voices will be heard on all issues and also preserving rural representation. Paid for by Speaker of the House Scott Bedke, and of course Representative Bedke is from District 27, Sarah Bedke, Treasurer. Maybe you're not worked up about this, but I am. I mean, when you have somebody get on a national news program for an hour last night and talk about greed and corruption and money laundering and lying and cheating, and it's with and for the president for nomination, I should say the presidential nominee of the Democratic Party, Joe Biden, and he's mixed in it with his brother Jim, and they're mixed in it with Hunter. Oh, boy, there's a guy. There's a real case. And other people. And finally, the question is asked about the different countries that the Bidens have had different business dealings with, and there was about 3 or 4 or 5 that were mentioned last night. A couple of days ago, somebody on this program called in and said, and I've questioned this too, the average wage per annum, I think back as a senator or congressman, is under $200,000 a year. Where did these guys like Biden and everybody else make so much money at $200,000 a year? They can afford all these homes, they can afford all these junkets, they can afford all the fancy cars, all the living in luxury. Ain't it going to happen? And here's this guy, Tony Bobulinski, that now literally has put his life on the line. And don't you think he hasn't? He's put his life on the line to clear his name as being part of anything dirty, shady, or not legal. And he named the Bidens. And the news media is covering it up. Yesterday, Donald Trump was at, I believe, 3 different locations, 3 different states yesterday. And it was estimated that the crowds that appeared to cheer him on at these rallies, when you combine all 3, was pretty close to 50,000 people. Pretty close to 50,000 people. Oh, but let's be fair. Joe Biden gave a speech in Georgia at a state park, and there were, I think, 12 people there. And do the numbers, do the math. Biden is supposedly leading overall across the United States by 5%. 5% polling numbers over Trump. And he curtails his activities and goes sits in the basement and has a cup of hot tea every day. And he's leading for the most prestigious office in the world, the presidency of the United States of America. And unfortunately for him, he doesn't even understand come here from Sikkim. I don't know. This is really something to worry about. Right now, let's go to the weather, and the weather brought to you by Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. And boy, I'll tell you what, you've heard the term use it or lose it. Well, with hearing loss, you better not take any chances, because that could really cause a lot of cognitive decline, and it's tied to your brain health. Caller, I'll be right there. Stand by. I urge you, I really do urge you to get a hold of my friends at Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. They can help you with your hearing problems. Please don't put it off. Call the number 312-0957. That number again, 312-0957. Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. Here's Gina with the weather.
Still on a slight warming trend as we make our way towards the weekend, and here's a look at your weather forecast for today. We are expecting sunny skies, a little bit of a breeze out of the west at about 5 miles an hour, looking at a high of 56. Tonight, mostly clear, low of 26. Tomorrow, sunny and 61 with an overnight low of 27. Looks like 67 by Friday. Mostly clear for Friday night with a low of 32. And then for the weekend, Saturday, sunny and 58 and 63 for Sunday. That's a look at your weather for Zeb.
I appreciate it, Gina. Thank you. Good job on the weather. And let's not forget Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids right behind the Minidoka County Hospital, across from the emergency room. Call for an appointment for your hearing health. 312-0957. Caller, good morning. You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
What are we going to do if America doesn't wake up and realize that Biden is merely a talking head? And Biden, no matter whether he has an honest bone in his body, which is questionable, he doesn't have a choice at this point. He's got to go along with these Kamala Harrises and Bernie Sanders and everything, because he can't get elected.
It is amazing. It's amazing to me how, and I'm not saying so much this area because this is a conservative area. God bless these folks here. But when you look at the LAs, the Chicagos, the New Yorks, and other places that are run by Democratic liberal mayors, and they've got a large percentage of population that are liberal, they don't know come here from Sikkim when it comes to politics. Oh, they're just going to vote for the politician that's going to gimme, gimme, gimme. I just do not understand how, with the likes of AOC coming out yesterday, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she made a 3-word statement that was in defiance of what's going on. She said, pack the court. Pack the court. And it's almost like I'm running this thing now, and we're going to disavow the 9-member Supreme Court, and we're going to pack the court. I mean, this woman scares me. She's more of a bartender than she'll ever be a congresswoman.
You know, I really enjoy when Tony calls you, because here's a man who has lived it. He's lived longer than most of us already. But he has been in that terrible, troubled city of New York, New Jersey, wherever it was he lived, and he knows the conditions there and everything. And believe me, what he tells us, you can take to the bank.
You got it, Keith. I got another call waiting. Thank you very, very much for calling back. I appreciate it. Caller, good morning. You're on the air. I'm frustrated this morning. Are you?
I'm just looking through this, Zeb. But in the last debate, Biden's unexpressive eyes are blackened by the lies he lives behind and his deceit. There was just no expression to him. He just had a black screen in front of those eyes of his, and you could see it during that. And during the debate, and it got worse towards the end, and he was so tied up in his brain,
yeah,
he didn't know up from down.
You know, I've said this before, I'll say it again, and I think you'll concur, that I feel sorry for the man aging and losing a lot of competency, etc. And you can see it. He's a shell of the man. He's a shell of the senator that he once was. And he has no business running for the greatest and, like I said earlier, most prestigious office in all the world, that being the President of the United States. And I'll just go right out on a limb, Earl, and I'll tell you that if he is elected as president, give him maybe at the most inaugural day in January and then 3 months afterwards, and I guarantee you the Democrats will use the 25th Amendment. They'll put him out, and look out, here comes little Miss Smiley and Laughy, Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I agree with that, Zeb. But, you know, if you're honest with yourself throughout your life, your eyes always shine, and I did not see any of that in Biden.
Well, I did. Conversely, I saw a man last night on television that was being interviewed in regards to Biden family and also the illegalities of money and etc. And I did not see a man that had his eyes darting around the room. I did not see a man that was stumbling and looking down at the floor trying to remember dates and times and people. I saw a man that was extremely specific about body language, eye contact, and direct speech, and I believe what he said last night about the Biden family.
And that's just what I seen when I watched that too, Zeb. That fellow's darn honest and sticking his neck out for this cause.
Yeah, wouldn't it be refreshing, Earl, honestly, if you turned on the news later on this afternoon and maybe turned on NBC or maybe ABC or whatever network, and all of a sudden they had a story about investigative reporting about the Bidens and perhaps illicit money gained from working with other countries and using the Biden name as influence. At least they would show that they're trying to be investigative reporters instead of being a doormat for the Biden family.
Well, persecution has its means of cleansing this, or persecution has its means of cleansing this world, actually.
Yeah, I know. I got to run, Earl. Thank you. God bless you. Take care up on the mountain. And I'm going to tell everybody about my major sponsor, and that's your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. All 7 locations serving you, and serving is the key word. It's tire changing time right now to get ready for whatever nature throws at us. The snow, the ice, the yuck, the muck, everything. They've got all the tires. They've got all the sizes for all vehicles. They've got the best in brake service, front end alignment, shocks and struts, batteries. Oh, you better have a good battery. All of this with James and Buell, Dan on Pole Line in Twin Falls, Lane and Rupert, Mike and Jerome, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, the Twist family in Paul, and my buddy Trent on Overland in Burley. Nobody better, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. I've got so many stories I wanted to get into this morning, especially I led up to and just touched on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, she came out yesterday and she said, expand the court, like it was a queen waving a magic wand and saying, well, 9's not good. Would you tell me, somebody, anytime today or tomorrow morning, why isn't 9 for the Supreme Court a good number? Why isn't 9 all of a sudden not going to work as it has for over 150 years? Why is it now that we have to be thinking about 13, 15, maybe 17? Who knows the number? Well, the only reason is because the liberals, Democrats, and sleaze want to take over a body of people that are supposed to study the laws according to our Constitution. They want to change that. We're going to take a little break and come back with Dave Bego, and then at 9:30, Representative Fred Wood. Don't miss a minute of it. Zeb at the ranch, and Sean's over there running the board, doing a great job, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Have a great day. Oh, good morning. Beautiful blue sky outside this morning. Zeb at the ranch. And, of course, brought to you by our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. All 7 locations with the very best in tires and service to you. Also, our great friends at Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Let's have this good word right now for Western Waste.
From the canyons of the Snake River and all across southern Idaho, we're all at your disposal. Western Waste Services, we care about our community, our resources, and this free land. Western Waste Services is standing ahead, always at your disposal.
Western Waste Services, don't forget, they are always at your disposal. The number to call, 734-6969, and you call them, get on the route service, let them come by once a week, get rid of your garbage. It's gone. These people are really good. They're very efficient. Don't forget, Western Waste Services, always at your disposal. I want to remind you, too, about our dear friends at Burley Physical Therapy, and having trouble getting hold of Dave? Well, see what you can find out in the end, please. Don't forget Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation with Nick and the entire staff. Always serving you to get you better and feeling like your old self. Absolutely. They've got the best of physical therapists and all the exercise programs and the use of the hydrotherapy pool, the only one of its kind in the area. I'm talking the best there is, and that's Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation, 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, and the number to call, 678-1191. One good word here about a dear friend of ours. Go vote. We, the people, have the civic obligation to choose our leadership. Be sure and vote for the candidate of your choice November 3rd. This message paid by the Re-elect District 27 Representative Fred Wood Committee, Steve Westfall, Treasurer. And one more good word before we go to the phone line and see if we can get a hold of Dave Bego. And that's for our friends at Hanson Mortuary. Joel Heward, his family, and his staff serving you and your family in a very critical time of need when there's the passing of a loved one. I urge you to write this number down and keep it where you can find it, 436-5636. That number again, 436-5636. Hanson Mortuary at 710 6th Street in Rupert, always serving the families with the best possible support and comfort, and again, always upholding the highest ethical standards with unquestioned integrity. Please remember Hanson Mortuary in Rupert and Joel Heward also serving you and your family at Morrison Payne Funeral Home on East Main in Burley. I'm going to check over with Sean, and did Dave... He's on the line. Thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate it. I always look forward to Wednesdays because we have with us not only a business entrepreneur, a complete success story, former great basketball player, but an author of the great books, The Devil at Our Doorstep. Dave Bego, good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, Zeb. Good morning. How are you doing?
Well, I'm frustrated, and I think it's worthy of discussing again this hour. I said last hour that I am absolutely appalled as to how sinister and how backward our media is right now in ignoring a story that should be investigated regarding the Bidens, the Biden family, and money for getting the procurement of the Biden name. All of this is being looked over by ABC, CBS, NBC, etc., and nobody's touching this story except Tucker Carlson and Fox News. Your thoughts?
Well, Zeb, I've told you this many times on the program. The unions control the media, and if they come on and go after Biden, try and play the stuff on Biden and the information and talk about it and that, the unions will go after their advertisers, and the media will start losing money, and so the media won't do it. They'll just not talk about Biden.
Have we turned into Venezuela? Have we turned into Cuba? Have we turned into the Soviet Union, where all the media is going to be getting a checklist of things they can or cannot write about or talk about? This scares me because I've been in this media for well over almost 60 years, and I am frightened as to the cowardice and under-the-table attitude of the news media.
Well, that's because, the far left wants to win this election and bring this country down into a socialist communist country. And they're going to continue going after the media, but this media isn't smart enough to understand that if the communists win, socialists win this election, Biden and his group and the far left, is that the media is still going to go down because people won't be watching them much anymore, and the economy will go really downhill, and the media won't be getting any money anyway. So they need to stand up and have some backbone now.
Yeah, but Dave, and I know that I get a little bit vocal, more so than you, and more actively involved, perhaps more so than you, because you've got a much more calm demeanor. But you've got to admit, this is very critical. We are looking at a story that if all of it pans out and is true about Joe Biden, his son Hunter, and his brother Jim, and the influence of money from various companies to use the Biden name, and the millions upon millions of dollars that were going back to the Bidens, these countries like China and other countries could utilize that and use Joe Biden as a puppet for the fact that they know he won't say or do anything against their country, and our United States of America is done.
Zeb, I agree with you 100%. But if we're not going to get the media to stand up, the people around the country have to listen to programs like you and really stand back and investigate what the media is saying and the lies and the information they're not providing, and all that kind of stuff, because the left is trying to brainwash everybody through the media, and that's what this is all about. And you remember in my book, my second book, The Devil at Our Doorstep, I talk about the fact that I was going on Fox Business News, and Glenn Beck came walking down the hall, and he had all this luggage, and I said, "Where are you going?" He says, "I've been fired because I did 2 shows on the SEIU, and they went after Fox. Fox started losing revenues, and they told Fox to fire me, and they'd leave their advertisers alone, so they fired me." And that's what the left and the unions are doing to the media today, and they're doing it big time.
Yeah, they are, but there's a caveat here. Let's talk what it is. And the caveat is a libertarian that has a talk show on television, and that's Tucker Carlson, has absolutely said, "I am not going to kowtow to the larger numbers of money and money people. I'm going to go ahead and do an investigative report on this story." That being said, he had Tony Bobulinski on the show last night for an hour, and when you look at the body language, the eye contact, the direct speech of remembrance of all the dates and times and places with the Biden family, I mean, come on, Dave, there's a lot of credence there. I look at stories with always a jaded eye. Is it true? Is it not true? What's phony? What's false? What is honesty? And last night, I saw an honest person relating stories and events about a family that cannot be trusted.
Well, I agree with you 100%. And evidently, Tucker has got Fox to stand up right now, which is a good thing. And I wish the rest of the media would stand up. I mean, it's not just the national media, it's the local media, too.
It is. Our own paper right here. I don't know how it is in Indianapolis, but I carefully went through our newspaper this morning, the illustrious Times News, and nowhere in this newspaper is any story connected with any investigation about Tony Bobulinski and his remarks made about the Biden family trying to get rich over various countries and various ties to various countries. You would think that investigative reporting would look at it, and if it's true, pursue it. If it's not, have at least a story that it's been negative, and there's no more going to follow it. But not even in our local paper was there anything.
Yeah, well, the problem is they don't have any backbone and guts.
There you go.
It's a shame.
It's more than a shame. It's the death of the American ideal of truth and honesty and integrity. I hate to sound like I'm on a soapbox, but you know doggone well that's the truth.
Yeah, I understand. I'm with you, but we have to fight back, and have to fight back hard and tell the people the truth and understand the truth.
Amen.
Because the left is nothing but big liars, hypocrites.
You know, I got to ask you, Dave, here's Donald Trump. And he's getting aboard Air Force One, the jet or the helicopter, and I mean, this guy is an Iron Man. I mean, you talk about the ever-ready bunny with batteries that never get exhausted. He went to 3 different speeches yesterday out on the stump. He's got 3 or 4 more today that he's going to go to. He's going to keep continuing that schedule right up to Election Day. Oh, but let's be fair. Joe Biden talked to 12 people in Georgia.
Yeah, it was hard to tell how many people were there, but I figured it was around that number. But boy, I tell you, Biden was more aggressive than I've seen him in speeches lately. I mean, he still stumbled a couple times, but he really was fierce. It was interesting that he kind of changed his attitude.
When you say changed his attitude, now, why do you say that? I look at Joe Biden and his handlers or mishandlers that are behind the scenes. I think they have realized the great big oops. The oops being that Biden has stayed in the basement. Biden has curtailed daily activities at approximately 10:30 every morning because the absolute drain on him physically is too much. I think his handlers have tried to cover him up for all of this presidential run, and I think now they might have a great big oops hanging over their head because I see a resurgence and I'm seeing numbers changing drastically for the re-election of Donald Trump.
Yeah, I do too, and but I think they're putting him out there on purpose to make him look like he's strong and health-wise he's okay, and that's why they're having him be more aggressive on TV and that. But I think that may be hurting him more than it's helping him.
Dave, I've said many times on my program that I absolutely detest, that's another form of saying I hate early voting. I don't trust it. I think it's just absolutely lending to the fraudulent activities that could take place. As of this morning, over 68 million votes have been cast, and I don't trust it. Some of these states have said, oh, well, we're going to give you till maybe November 12th, 9 days after the election, and we'll still count those ballots. I think this is fraud, phony, and absolutely going to be the worst and most dishonest election we've ever had.
Yeah, it's very concerning, Zeb, and especially in the Democratic states, and of course the mail-in balloting worries me more than anything. And in certain states like in Indiana and that, the polls are controlled very, very well and everything, even for early voting. And I'm not worried about that here, but in some other red states. But I am very concerned about it in the battleground states and in the Democratic states.
Last week on the program, and I was taking notes while you were on, you made the statement, and it was prior to the debate with Biden and Trump, and you said you certainly hoped that he would change his demeanor and be very presidential and professional. He was. I'm going to stand up and say he was. And I thought he nailed Biden on at least 5 or 6 different issues that the moderator bailed Biden out. Do you agree or disagree?
No, I agree with you. I think Trump was very much more professional and did a good job and everything. The moderator, she did support Biden, but again, that's part of the media things. But she wasn't as bad as the previous moderator, but she still, obviously, her support was behind Biden.
Absolutely. Now, I want to ask you something else. Would you please explain to me, I know I'm just an old cowboy from Idaho, but would you tell me if you have 9 people on a court, and that means an uneven number, so they'll be very decisive about how they feel, but there will be a vote one way or the other to decide the validity of their vote. In other words, 5-4 or maybe 6-3, whatever the case might be. What is the sense in expanding and packing the court, as was the demand yesterday by a former bartender trying to be a congresswoman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
Oh, again, she is a communist behind the scenes also, and it's just their way of controlling this country and taking away our rights, and that's what they want to do. I mean, I don't know if you've seen in the past, but she's been in support of places like Venezuela and that, and that's crazy because the American people need to step back and look. Venezuela used to be a very vibrant country because they were big in oil and they were a capitalist type of society, and then communists come in and took them over, and now you find more people living in boxes and little sheds that are falling apart than ever before.
Absolutely. But I mean, this is so scary to me, and it should be to everybody, that we have a Democratic Party that absolutely seems so frayed at the ends, if you will, and they've got a man that's the figurehead running for the presidency, Joe Biden, that doesn't have the mental capacity. Look in his eyes. I mean, man, he doesn't know if the light's green or red. And then you've got lurking in the background Kamala Harris, that has made a reputation of getting what she wants all the time, and she wants the Oval Office. And then you've got Bernie Sanders, they might name as Commerce Secretary or Labor Secretary. You've got a girl, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She doesn't know anything about energy other than when she plugs her hairdryer in, it should run. I mean, I'm scared.
No, I'm with you 100%. And again, all these people have been selected by the far left, and to get them in there and say these things and do these things, and if they win, the far left is going to control them, and it's going to be ugly, and it's going to be a heck of a fight. And the American people need to wake up now and make sure President Trump gets reelected, and the Republican Party regains the Senate, and it'd be even nice if they got the House, too.
Let me just ask you this, and I'm not trying to sound negative, but I'm being realistic. Here we are, just literally 6 days away. Is it too late to save our nation?
No, I don't think so at all. There's enough people out there to understand this, and I think just the number of people you see at Trump campaigns, even in Democratic states and these states that are on the edge one way or another. I think that tells you something about how people feel about it. And I really feel like a lot of Republicans, when they're asked for their opinions in polls and that, they don't even talk to the polling people because they've got it in their mind what they want to do. And I've talked to some people that are on the Democratic side that I think they're leaning towards Trump.
I want to ask you about another story that was really, really worrisome, and it angered me so much last night. I'll give you a quick case scenario in case you haven't heard of it. The police in Philadelphia confronted a black man, with a knife the other day. And they told him to put the knife down, and they wanted to subdue him, and he came after the policeman with a knife and was going to attack the cop, and the cops shot this man. Ever since this happened, there has been an uproar of riots and looting and burning in Philadelphia. These rioters and these vermin completely emptied out a Walmart store, and I guess my question to you, Dave, is, are we now going to administer justice primarily on the color of skin? In other words, are the blacks above the law?
No, nobody's above the law, but you got to understand, Zeb, that this is being controlled by the unions, and the SEIU, the union that I fought, they are huge in Philadelphia, huge, and they control what's going on in the politics in the city of Philadelphia. And I'm sure when that happened, immediately they got people out to riot, and they're going to continue to do that. And it's unfortunate. And again, we have to wake up the American people to what is going on behind the scenes. These people aren't for America. They're not for blacks. They're not for whites. They're not for anybody. They're for themselves. And America needs to wake up to that.
Okay, wake up to it, but my fear is, and let's be honest and very, very open here, I hope and pray that Donald Trump regains and gets re-election for the presidency of this country. But at that same time, when he's inaugurated again in January, I think he's going to have to be ready with an iron fist to bloody the nose of these people that are absolute rioters and looters and detractors away from civil obedience in this country. He's going to have to come down very hard.
No, there's no doubt he's going to have to be strong, and I think he will. And quite honestly, I think some of this will go away for a while, because this is all about the money they're spending to get Biden elected behind the scenes and everything. The unions can't afford to keep this up because they continue to lose membership across the country.
I agree with you. Man, I wished I had more time to visit with you on Wednesdays. Dave Bego, a dear, dear friend back in Indianapolis, Indiana. God bless you, man. Thank you so much. And I guess we'll be talking to you the day after next week.
Well, thank you, and have a good week. And looks like you've got warmer weather out there than we've got here.
Well, it's supposed to get up into the mid-60s by this weekend, and I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to yell. I'm just going to relish it. So thank you, Dave. God bless you, man. Thanks.
You take care.
All right. Thank you much. Dave Bego, a dear, dear friend back in Indianapolis, Indiana. Want to remind you about a great place to go. And if you hear a splat here on the air, S-P-L-A-T, I am going to start warfare on a couple of flies that are celebrating their last couple of days alive, this one being the last day, I hope, that have been bugging me in this office studio since this morning when I got in here at about 4:45. Ay, ay, ay. Denny's Restaurant, don't forget, 611 North Overland in Burley, and another location at 291 Pole Line Road in Twin Falls. Absolute delicious food. You go in and you really got a problem of trying to pick and choose the menu items that you want. Everything is fantastic. Everything is delicious. And served to you by people that are really, really nice. I'm talking about America's Diner. Denny's Restaurant at 611 North Overland in Burley. Please don't forget breakfast, lunch, dinner, desserts, everything at Denny's Restaurant. Great, great people. Let's not forget, too, go vote November 3rd and vote yes for Amendment HJR 4 and leave the number of legislative districts at 35, guaranteeing that our voices will be heard on all issues and also preserving rural representation. Paid for by Speaker of the House Representative Scott Bedke, District 27, Sarah Bedke, Treasurer. In just a moment, we're going to have another dear friend of ours, and I really have a lot of respect for this man. He's been a longtime representative of the state of Idaho, and that's Representative Fred Wood coming on the program momentarily. Want to remind you, too, about Let's Ride, 270 Highway 24 between Rupert and the World. Oh, my goodness, they have got a showroom full of fun. Yes, they do. They've got all the snowmobiles, and when I say all, I mean I don't know how they crammed everything in there. Unbelievable. And all the accessories, too. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6, Saturdays, 9 to 2. Really good people serving you at Let's Ride, 270 Highway 24 between Rupert and the World. And it's true, this is where the fun is sold. While you're over in that area, I urge you to stop in and see some other friends of mine, and they are Cameron and Siemens Insurance. I have been really, really happy with the amount of work and ethics that they always apply to their business and serving their customers, me included, and they do a phenomenal job with life insurance, health insurance, retirement planning, employee benefits, all of this and more for you, your family, and your business. Please get a hold of the people that are really accessible and devoted to serving you, Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. The number to call, 436-4424. One more good word, one more, the man said, and that's going to be about our friend Clark Kaufman. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a lot of these great folks, and Clark Kaufman asks for your vote to re-elect him as Idaho State Representative, District Seat 25B. Even more, Clark wants you to get out and exercise your right to vote. Clark Kaufman has served Idaho very well since 2012, serving you, serving all of Idaho. In order to logically keep our voices heard, Clark encourages you to vote yes on the constitutional amendment, changing the language to simply require the legislature to consist of 35 districts. Let's all do our part. Get out and vote. Paid for by the committee to re-elect Clark Kaufman for House Seat 25B, Debbie Kaufman, Treasurer. Right now, as I said, I'm very honored to have this gentleman on the program anytime he has the time to come on our show, and that's Representative Fred Wood. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Zeb. How are you this morning?
Well, first of all, the major burning question is, did you get your elk?
I did.
Aha.
I did.
And was it worthy of the hunt?
Oh, it was. It was a really nice fat heifer. So she'll eat real good.
Okay, well, I'll certainly look forward to the written invitation. Sean, we got a little feedback here on the line. If you could curtail that a little bit, I'd appreciate it. Fred, I wanted to have you on the program this morning, not to talk about politics per se, but to talk about Medicare and what's happening to the program of Medicare and what might happen as far as kind of a watering down or dissolution of the entire program. And that's where I'd like to start. What is Medicare? How was it started? Who does it benefit? How do you get a part of it? How do you pay for it? How do you qualify? And what's going to happen in the future? Those are some loaded questions I'd like you to touch on.
Okay. Well, let me get back into my memory here. So Medicare is a completely federal program. The states have nothing to do with Medicare as opposed to Medicaid. Okay, so we're talking strictly Medicare, and that's a complete federal program. As far back, actually the first person to try to develop a national medical program or national medical insurance so that every single person, if they wanted to, could sign on to it, like a lot of countries have, particularly the developed countries, was Theodore Roosevelt when he was running against Woodrow Wilson in 1912. He proposed a national medical program. That never really went anywhere. The next guy that really tried to get Congress to pass it, and he sent a letter to Congress to do it, was President Harry Truman in 1945, because after World War II and a lot of veterans came home, etc., an awful lot of people in the United States did not have access to medical insurance or health care. That never really went anywhere. But over the next 20 years, more and more retired people basically just, there was no option to try to purchase health care in the United States or purchase health insurance in the United States. So Congress finally in 1965 passed, I forget the number of the bill right now, but they passed Medicare. And it basically was for retired people from age 65 on. And he signed it in Independence, Missouri, and the very first person that qualified for Medicare and was issued a Medicare card was Harry Truman, and Bess Truman was next. So that's how Medicare got started. The first people became eligible in 1966. Congress has expanded the coverage of Medicare multiple times, starting actually in 1966 when they allowed people with end-stage renal disease, people whose kidneys no longer functioned, to go on Medicare, and you could do that as early as 3 months of age. So even today, people who, at any point in their life, their kidneys shut down, can actually go on a specific program in Medicare for end-stage renal disease. Congress, through the years, and I won't go through all of the ways that they have expanded that, but basically they have expanded it to mostly people with disabilities, both mental and physical disabilities. It's a significant hoop to get signed on to that, but you can do that. In 2019, last year, there were 60.9 million people, million Americans, on Medicare of some form. The cost to the federal government in 2019, I believe, was something like $620 billion, billion with a B, spent for health care for those nearly 61 million people. I don't foresee Medicare going away. There have been attempts to try to, quotes, privatize it, end quotes. That's code for eliminating it or ending it. So anytime you hear any politician talk about, quotes, privatizing Medicare, that's code for trying to eliminate because they don't want to pay for it.
Fred, let me
be perfectly honest with you.
Let me interrupt there, if I may.
Go ahead.
Let me interrupt there, if I may, and ask a question. With that being said about the possible elimination of Medicare or stop or discontinue the funding, what in regards to Medicare for all? We hear politicians like Kamala Harris and others say, oh, we've got to provide Medicare for all. All is a word that really scares me because I think you would absolutely destroy the program.
Well, as we know it today, you would. And so, again, Medicare for all, I think, Zeb, and I've not talked to people who advocate for that, but what I have read is this goes back to trying to find a national health care program that any American can sign on to. And since we have basically a national program for the elderly and for some disease processes and some particularly developmentally disabled people, since we have essentially a national program for that, I think that most people think that it would be just easier to open that up and allow anybody to. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that from what I can read of what they would do about it, I would not be in favor of that. I think that there's a much better way to develop or to leave Medicare as we know it today alone and develop a couple of other programs that anybody who wanted to could sign up, and any company that wanted to pay for its employees could sign up. I mean, there's various ways of doing that, but I don't think expanding just the traditional Medicare program to everybody is a smart way to do it, at least from what I've been able to glean of what these people want to do.
Fred, let me ask you this. You've been a representative for our state of Idaho for quite some time, and I had something occur 2 weeks ago prior to asking you to come on the program. I think that there is a real definition problem of people that sometimes misconstrue Medicare and Medicaid. Would you agree or not?
Oh, absolutely, Zeb. Absolutely. You know, one of the things that I have learned of being a legislator is that when you start talking to people, you know, it's almost like you start any conversation like you and I are having right now, okay, and all of your listeners are listening to. It's almost like, okay, let's spend the first 5 minutes sitting down and defining the terms that we're going to talk about. There's a huge difference between Medicaid and Medicare. Medicare is a complete federal program. Medicaid is a partnership program between the federal government and the state government. Unfortunately, the feds get to make most of the rules, but in the case of Idaho, they pay for the bulk of the program. But there's a whole, and they cover a whole different population of people. It's not the same at all. You're dead right, Seth. You're dead right.
Well, do you think it's worthy, and not take a long time, but to describe the differences? There were a lot of people that were writing op-eds to the paper and yelling and screaming about Medicaid for all. And at the same time, I was still getting calls at my studio about the confusing of Medicare and Medicaid. I mean, how do you go about defining it so that the general public really does understand?
I think it's this, that basically, Medicare is a program for retired people from 65 on. Okay? That is, if you keep that thought in your mind alone, then that's the definition of Medicare. Medicaid is for the disabled, both physically disabled and mentally disabled, and the poor people. Okay, people who make less than a certain percent of the federal poverty level. That is the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. They cover two distinctly different populations. There's still a majority of Americans that are not covered by either one of those programs. And that's what the whole issue of trying to develop something like Medicare for All comes in, is they want to have a similar program for everybody else. And it may become particularly acute if, in fact, the U.S. Supreme Court overturns the Affordable Care Act and overturns pre-existing conditions, etc. You're going to wind up with a whole bunch of people that are not going to be able to purchase health insurance, even though they want to. And then you really are going to have a problem.
Let me ask you this, though, Fred, before we take a call. There are those that are saying, well, no, we're not going to replace the Affordable Care Act. We're going to rewrite and more intensify some of the points of interest. Is that possible?
I'm here to tell you what, I've been in the legislature for 14 years now, and some of the biggest fights have always occurred over what to do about health care. And if you think that, I've observed Congress like you've observed Congress, and when in your recent memory have they ever been able to sit down and agree on anything?
Mm-hmm.
I mean anything. I don't see a health care bill coming out of Congress. Period.
Okay,
you may have more faith in Congress than I do, but I have none.
I don't think I do. I have a caller waiting to ask a question. However, caller, good morning. You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. Quick question. Some confusion on, you say advertising now like every 30 minutes on the TV about Medicare. What's legal? Is this private? They're trying to private the companies? Could you clear that up for me? Because I'm really confused.
Fred, please.
Okay, so what happens every single year, you can reapply for or change your Medicare coverage. In other words, there's an open enrollment period every year, and I think it's from like the 1st of October to December the 7th or something like that. Anyway, there's about a 6 to 8 week period in there where Medicare has open enrollment. And what do I mean by open enrollment? Well, you have to remember that there's 4 parts to Medicare. There's Medicare Part A, which is your inpatient hospitalization. There's Medicare Part B, which is your outpatient Medicare when you go to see your doctor in his office or her office, etc. There's Part C of Medicare, which is Medicare Advantage plans. And Medicare Advantage plans, Congress passed that in 2003 under the Bush administration, and that allows private companies to actually offer health insurance programs under Medicare. In other words, they will take your Medicare dollars, and then they will provide the insurance for the health care. And then there's Part D, which is the drug benefit. Part C normally includes Part A, B, C, and D.
Mm-hmm.
So you have multiple choices from multiple providers, including traditional Medicare, which is sponsored by the federal government as opposed to a commercial insurance company. So that's what this is all about. All it is multiple options for you to choose from, and if your health condition changes, let's say, for instance, you've been fairly healthy and you're 70 some odd years old or whatever, and then all of a sudden you develop a chronic disease or maybe two, and your prescription requirements really change, then you might want to go and start shopping Medicare Advantage plans to find out which one offers you the best pharmacy benefit, because now your health needs have changed. To the caller, this has nothing to do with privatizing it at all. This happens every single year, and they advertise to make sure that you know that you can change your Medicare plans once a year, and during this open enrollment is when you are allowed to do that.
Fred, let me ask you right there, though, and a question that popped into my mind. What about the general public really not understanding about the transition of maybe changing the benefits, etc., would you suggest they try to go through a professional, be it an insurance man or whatever, so that they can understand what they might be changing their program for?
Absolutely, Zeb. I, as well as anybody thinks they understand things, when you need it's kind of this, everybody belly aches and moans about the cost of the United States Marines, but when you need the United States Marines, nothing else will do. Well, I'm here to tell you, when you're talking about your health care, you need an expert. And if it were me, and I do it myself, even as much as I think I know, there's a whole bunch I don't know, Zeb. And I always go to insurance representatives to make sure that I understand all of my options. I would encourage every single listener, particularly at the Medicare level, when you become eligible for Medicare, you make sure you have a good insurance agent who is registered and understands Medicare to advise you about what to do.
Any final thoughts this morning? Before I've got about a minute and a half left, Fred, in regards to Medicare, Medicaid, or any other social programs that you think, like Social Security, that might be in jeopardy if this election goes the wrong way?
I don't think there's so much in jeopardy from Congress, so much as there is from certain people who ideologically just don't agree with social programs, and I mean, that's what the whole gist of trying to get the Affordable Care Act struck down is. There are a number of people in the country that don't think that, they think this: if you want health care, you have to go buy your own. Because the government shouldn't be in the business of providing health care for anybody. Well, that's a pretty tough stance to take, and I disagree with that. Improvements can be made in Medicare, I think. Mm-hmm. Improvements can be made in Medicaid, I think. Mm-hmm. But to suddenly end those programs and then rely on an entity like Congress to, in their collective wisdom, to draw up a program that the rest of us want, I'm not sure I would rely on that.
I certainly hope that you said collective wisdom with quotation marks around it, because...
I did.
Okay.
I meant it that way, yes.
Representative Fred Wood, a real friend of this program. Fred, God bless you, man, for taking the time to come on our program, and it's nice to have Daniel Boone home, and I'll be calling you in the near future.
Thanks, Zeb. Talk to you later.
All right, take care. He knows and was very explanatory about Medicare, Medicaid. I really appreciate that. Holy cow, I'm running late. I've got to tell everybody about Patterson's Electronics, 421 East Main in Burley. Curtis and Lorena and the staff over there serving you with all your electronic needs. And, underline that word and, now they've got also dehydrated food in stock. I mean, you better stop in and check it out. And they've got discount specials on certain amounts that you purchase. So check it out today at Patterson's Electronics. All the home theater systems, video surveillance cameras, car stereos and speakers, all the TVs, everything. And they're open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6, closed on Sundays. Of course, they need a little rest. Patterson's Electronics, 421 East Main in Burley. Let's go to the weather quickly before I run out of time. And the weather is brought to you by some friends of mine, and they should be friends of yours too, the professionals, Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company. They've been providing accounting services to the Mini-Cash area for well over 50 years. They are the best at what they do. Tax return preparation, assistance with IRS communications, financial statement preparation, retirement planning, all All of this and a whole bunch more by the professionals. Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company, with offices in Burley and Rupert. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Still on a slight warming trend as we make our way towards the weekend, and here's a look at your weather forecast for today. We are expecting sunny skies, a little bit of a breeze out of the west at about 5 miles an hour, looking at a high of 56. Tonight, mostly clear, low of 26. Tomorrow, sunny and 61 with an overnight low of 27. Looks like 67 by Friday. Mostly clear for Friday night with a low of 32. And then for the weekend, Saturday, sunny and 58 and 63 for Sunday. That's a look at your weather for Zeb at the Range.
Now, that's the kind of a fall I like. Thank you very much. And the weather brought to you this hour by Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company. They can help you in your business. If you're going to be expanding your business and adding on more employees, you've got the questions, they've got the answers. With offices at 1710 Overland in Burley and 625th Street in Rupert. The professionals, Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane, and Company. Wow. Also, quickly, I want to remind you again, November 3rd, District 24A needs Paul Thompson in the Idaho House. Paul knows we need values established by God, fiscal responsibility, and all life matters. The right to protect ourselves and guaranteed freedom to worship and speak. A strong state education system and patients are in charge, not politicians. And above all, our Constitution is never second to anyone. Vote Paul Thompson, District 24A, paid for by Paul Thompson for Idaho, Issy Gibbs, Treasurer. Caller, real quick. Yours truly is running late. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning to you too, Zeb. You know, you just had the doctor on the phone there, and that was really some good advice. Yesterday, I went to Cameron and Siemens, to Todd Siemens, one of your advertisers, and he's handled my insurance needs for many years. And I found that there is so many little quirks in the laws and everything that you need to consult with a professional.
Oh, absolutely. And I really respect Fred for saying, even though he has the inside knowledge, if you will, he also confides in a professional. And I so much appreciate your remarks, because in this day and age, you've got to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed in your favor.
Oh, and it didn't cost me anything, but he guided me in a direction that's going to work well for me.
All right. Hey, Keith, I got to run to the news, but thank you so much. I do appreciate those remarks. Thank you.
Okay.
Don't forget, go vote November 3rd and vote yes for Amendment HJR4 and leave the number of legislative districts at 35, guaranteeing that our voices will be heard on all issues and also preserving rural representation. Paid for by Speaker of the House Representative Scott Bedke, District 27, Sarah Bedke, Treasurer. Right now, I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to sit back in this chair and kind of take a deep breath and go, woo-wee, we got another hour left. I'll be back in about 7 minutes. Thank you very much, and welcome back to our last hour for this Wednesday. Zeb at the Ranch, brought to you by our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations with the best of tires and service for you. Along with our friends, Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. Before we go to our guest, we've got some great people to talk about, including 7K Metals. You can help yourself build your financial security and future through silver purchases sent right to your home with our friends at 7K Metals. I urge you to call Lon Hardy at 312-8699 or Sharon at 430-3259 and find out more about investing in financial security and wealth protection through silver. Absolutely, it's a great saving opportunity for you and a valued treasure for your loved ones in the future. 7K Metals. You call them, tell them I told you to call, and that's Lon and Sharon serving you at 7K Metals. Want to also remind everybody about what's going on at Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More. Holy moly, they're having a great big harvest sale. Listen to this, 40% off. You heard me right. 40% off on all furniture, mattresses, dining room sets, bedroom sets. Oh, my goodness. And hold on, 50% off on Simmons Beauty Rest mattresses. Start the car, Martha. Here we go to 459 Overland in Burley. I'm talking about Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More. With their great big harvest sale going on, no money down, no interest up to 48 months on approved credit, you stop in to Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More today. And don't forget to vote November 3rd, and be sure to vote yes for the levy increase for the Rock Creek Fire District. They are always there to serve us. Now, let's help them. Vote yes for the Rock Creek Fire District levy, paid for by the Rock Creek Firefighters Association. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to the phone line right now. And I've been really anxious to have this gentleman on my program, and he is the president and CEO of D. James Kennedy Ministries. He's worked on Capitol Hill for over 24 years, and he's got an insight as to what the swamp is really like. Dr. Frank Wright, Ph.D., good morning, sir. How are you?
Zeb, good morning to you. You can leave the Ph.D. off, my friend.
Well, I'll tell you what, in my case, they always say I've got a Ph.D. too, but that's a post hole digger. Dr. Wright, I am so honored to have you on this program and discuss a topic about a gentleman, and I use that term very loosely, that I consider to be one of the most sinister and evil people in our society today, and that's George Soros. How would you respond to that statement I just made?
Well, you've made that statement, Zeb, as an informed person who pays attention to the media and does a lot of research. Most other people listening today, I bet, have heard his name before and maybe heard one or two things about him, but they have no idea of the extent of his reach into the American system, influencing influencing so many things with a hard left progressive worldview. You know, Winston Churchill said about Russia that it was a riddle wrapped up in a mystery inside an enigma. He had a way with words, but that's a good description of Soros. Here's a fellow who is Jewish by birth, but he denies God, and he absolutely hates Israel. And yet, he's quick to call any critics of his anti-Semitic, because we've had the temerity to question George Soros, and we get labeled anti-Semitic for that. Our U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Freeman, said, George Soros has done more to vilify the state of Israel and to fund anti-Israel propaganda machines than almost any individual on the face of the earth. That's a pretty strong statement, wouldn't you say that? Absolutely.
Where did this man make his billions? I mean, what kind of business was he in? What kind of contacts? What kind of social surroundings did he have to develop this absolutely amazing money empire?
Well, this is part of the enigma of who George Soros is. He was born in Hungary in 1930, so 10 years before the serious outbreak of World War II. His parents placed him with a Gentile man as a way of hiding his identity. Most of the Jews were being transported out of Hungary, and so Soros' adopted mentor told everybody that George was his adopted grandson, and he was a Gentile. So George escaped the transportation of the Jews, but he and his quote-unquote father went around confiscating the property of the Jews that had been transported. And when George Soros was interviewed on 60 Minutes some years ago about this, he was asked, have you thought about that? I mean, does this trouble you, what you did all those years ago? And he says, no, not at all. Not at all. No difficulty with it whatsoever. But here's the thing, in direct answer to your question, part of the enigma of him is he fled in the face of communism. The latter part of the war, when the Russians were coming from the east, the Nazis were retreating, Soros fled to the west as far as he could get, ended up in Great Britain, later became a citizen of the United States. He's made his money in honest ways and ways that other people have questioned. He's basically a hedge fund billionaire making large bets on the movement, the direction of currencies, and he literally broke the British pound at one point, drove its value down so far, and then shorted what they call shorting the market against it, and cost the British taxpayers billions of dollars. So his wealth has been earned in financial markets, but he's applied that wealth to hard-left, progressive socialist causes here and around the world.
When you say that, and I know it's true, it's very obvious, this man absolutely hates America, hates our Constitution and our value system, but I guess the simple question would be at that point, Dr. Wright, why? Why does he have this animus against the United States and the freest country ever on the face of the earth?
Well, Zeb, here's a small piece of it, and I don't know how much to make of it, but we can't let this pass by. We said Soros is Jewish by birth, but he denies God. He's an atheist. He believes God was invented by man. But he claims himself to be some kind of a god. He said, I fancied myself as some kind of god. If the truth be known, I carried some rather potent messianic fantasies with me from childhood. And later he said, it's a sort of disease when you consider yourself some kind of god, the creator of everything. But I feel comfortable about it now since I began to live it out. That's a scary statement to hear come from a man with his power, his wealth, and his influence. He has gone on to describe his personal goal as becoming the conscience of the world. Now, Zeb, this is clearly a man with a very lofty self-regard, and this personality is what's animating his attempt to undermine the very foundations of America.
You know, it's easy for us to sit here this morning, Dr. Wright, you and I, and discuss the absolutely disgusting personality of George Soros and his welcoming of chaos and anarchy. But then the question has to come up, wait a minute, this man is in his 80s. Who is following him? What kind of a board of directors? What kind of supporters? I mean, who's going to pick up the ball and run with it? That scares me as much as George Soros does today.
Well, you're spot on with that. Soros is 90 years old. He's got children, but he's placed the bulk of his wealth at this point into what's called his Open Society Foundation. He put $20 billion in this foundation, which generates about $1 billion of revenue a year that he says goes to promote his values. Well, among those values are abortion, LGBTQ activism, open borders, euthanasia, legalized prostitution, and drugs. He's totally anti-Second Amendment. He wants to defund the police, and he's in favor of what he calls judicial reform. Now, here's the rub, and we've seen this in the news all summer long. His judicial reform takes the form of putting millions of dollars into the election campaigns of hard-left progressive prosecutors. Over 1 million in Philadelphia, nearly 2 million in Chicago, nearly 2 million in Los Angeles. And I guess the city of Philadelphia is burning tonight, well, last night, wasn't it? And who's the prosecutor there? A hard-left progressive who releases the rioters and protesters without any bail. That's what's happened in Chicago as well, and also certainly to some extent in Los Angeles. So Soros is putting his money where his mouth is. In my view, George Soros, let me say it another way. What FedEx is to overnight delivery, George Soros is to the funding of socialism. He funds hard-left organizations all over the place, and he leads many other liberal foundations in doing the same thing. In fact, Zeb, we have published what I call the follow the money chart, showing where all Soros's money goes and how it ends up in the hands of people like Black Lives Matter and the Southern Poverty Law Center and, as I say, just about every radical organization that you can imagine, including, sadly, some left-wing evangelical organizations like Sojourners and Catholic Charities and the World Council of Churches and so on too. But we see him giving money to the Aspen Institute, to the National LGBTQ Task Force, to Americans United for the Separation of Church and State. Every one of these organizations, Think Progress, People's Action, CARE, the Council on Arab American Islamic Relations, a tool in many people's minds of radical Islamists. So Soros' money feeds all of these organizations, but others follow him, like the Rockefeller Foundation, the Hewlett Foundation, the McCormick Foundation, all of these. By the way, as I look at this list, Knight Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, Rockefeller, these were foundations created by conservatives that were over time, long after their passage from the scene, were turned over to the hands of administrators who are hard left radicals themselves. So Soros is literally the engine of the left. It's not all his money. Others follow him along with that, so much so that David Horowitz and Richard Poe, two authors of a book on Soros, have called him the architect and guiding genius of the shadow party, the party that wants to undermine all of our American institutions so that socialism can rise in America again.
You know, that was one of the best dissertations I've heard ever regarding George Soros and his movement. And I sit here, I'm 73 years old, and I remember the old days. I remember the Saturday Evening Post with the covers of Mom and Dad and little Johnny and Susie going to church on Sunday morning. I remember sitting around the table and having Thanksgiving with the family and giving thanks to the good Lord for the bounty that we were sharing. I remember all the goodness of the past, and I question, Dr. Wright, can we ever return, or are those values completely gone forever?
Zed, let me say it this way. The genius of the American experiment was that we get to choose our own rulers. Never in the history of the world had that been true before the founding of the American Republic in 1776. We get to choose our own rulers. The founders believed they believed in we the people. They believed that government was embodied in the people. There's no government without the consent of the governed. And our system has been created in such a way to provide certain checks and balances. And the left has used the judicial branch to get almost everything that it's done to undermine our society accomplished through the courts. And I think, Zeb, I think this is the explanation for the so-called Trump derangement syndrome. When Donald Trump ran for president, he said, not only will I appoint this kind of justice to the Supreme Court and to the federal bench, I'll appoint these people. Gave us a list. And he said, we are going to remake the federal judiciary, turning it back to a constitutionally governed and guided system. And he's largely done that. My goodness, 300 confirmed appointments to the federal courts at all levels, 3 Supreme Court justices now. And this is why the left has gone, they've lost their collective mind, because Donald Trump is taking away from them the vehicle that they have used to reshape America. I can't think of a single major culture-shaping decision that has changed our society in a leftward direction politically that has not been implemented by the courts. This is why they are in a fit to get rid of Donald Trump. So you said, can we ever get back? The genius of the American founding was we choose our own rulers. There's an election coming up. We can take it back, but we have to get off our duffs, get into the voting booth, and we have to act as part of we the people and demand that our elected officials continue what President Trump has started, and that is returning our government to a constitutional system that the founders envisioned.
You know, everything you said is right. Everything you said, I agree with. But I look at society today, Dr. Wright, and pardon me, we have, as a society, and not all, but most of our society has ignored God, forgot about church, forgot about family values. And until we reestablish, I think, a direct line of communication with the God above, we're never going to see any more righteous days for America.
Zeb, I couldn't agree with you more. We are a people whose hearts are far from God. We are a culture fleeing headlong from any notion of biblical morality or biblical understanding. And we are a nation in need of revival. I think what the Lord has done with President Trump's first administration is given us a little breathing space where the courts are beginning to turn back. And I don't know if you heard President Trump actually taunting Joe Biden at the last debate, and he said, you guys left 100, when you left office, you left 120 judicial vacancies. I filled every one of them. Thank you very much. Trump is turning the judiciary back, and I believe the courts now, instead of being our enemy, might be our friend in helping defend religious freedom. But you said it exactly right. Abraham Lincoln said the same thing in 1864. We are a nation who has forgotten God. And apart from revival, I think even a Trump re-election victory, which I expect, quite frankly, next week, I think a Trump re-election victory could end up being a Pyrrhic victory. We might see better governance and, a tendency to small government and reducing regulations and taxes and all those wonderful things, but we're still a people that stand in judgment of God. And so 2 Chronicles 7:14 is the verse, isn't it? If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and heal their land. We have no hope going forward apart from God entering into human history in a new way, bringing revival to America.
Dr. Wright, I would like you to expand. I've only got a couple of minutes left, but I want you to expand a little bit on a couple of, I hate to use the term organizations, but they call themselves Black Lives Matter and also Antifa. I have a great fear that those two groups are going to start to expand and be like a cancer across the entire landscape of America, unfolding their fear and their wrath into the suburban and rural areas, and we could be looking at total chaos in the not-too-distant future. Am I wrong?
Black Lives Matter is a Marxist socialist organization. Until they cleaned up their website 10 days ago, they explicitly called for socialism and the destruction of the traditional family. And Black Lives Matter could care less about black lives. Proof positive of that is that if they cared at all about the lives of black human beings, they would be advocating vociferously against Planned Parenthood, which has killed over 20 million black babies since Roe versus Wade in 1973. A third of all the abortions in America have been to on black babies, and yet they make up 14% of the population. This is genocide taking place in the black community. What does Black Lives Matter have to say about it? Nothing. Zeb, back to your point, a ton of money has flowed into Black Lives Matter and Antifa in the last year. And a good bit of that from Soros and others. When I say a ton of money, hundreds of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. They do not lack the funding to do the things that we've seen happen all summer long in the cities. The question is, but they're still small in number. The only question is, will law enforcement stand up? Perhaps the president will come to the place where he'll declare martial law and bring in the troops. If things go forward the way they've been with Black Lives Matter and these other radical groups, and they are unopposed, then we will be in the middle of a new civil war. Mm-hmm. And it's really up to our elected leaders to bring that to a stop, to restore law and order. We are a nation of laws. The U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. sits at the intersection of north, south, east, and west in the capital city. The dome of the rotunda of the Capitol sits directly over the center of the city, making a statement that we are a nation of laws. And we have to demand that our elected officials will enforce those laws, or we should replace them, every one of them.
All I can say is I wished I was not having to curtail my activities because of the clock, and we've already expanded our time. And I want to say to Dr. Frank Wright, CEO and president of D. James Kennedy Ministries, please come back. I've got a lot more questions. I know you have a lot more answers. Thank you for the time on the program this morning.
Zeb, thanks so much. Send your folks to djkm.org to find out more.
We will do that, sir. Thank you so much. God bless. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Zeb.
Very interesting gentleman, Dr. Frank Wright, and that's one of mine that I'm going to save and have him back in the very near future. Thank you very much. Holy cow, we've got to pay some bills, and let's see, where am I going to go next? Oh, I want to remind you about a sale that's coming up on this Saturday. It's the Bennett Boys Auction Service, and they're having the Isidro Cortez retirement sale. It's going to be at 10 o'clock this Saturday, October 31st, and it's located in Buell at 3813 North, 1600 East of Buell. Look for the signs, and they're going to have lunch by the Cook Shack. They're going to have vehicles and trucks and loaders and tractors and equipment and even a barn. Yeah, an old barn with lots of barn wood for all the people that like to build with that old barn wood. Oh, yeah. And lots of miscellaneous items at this sale coming up this Saturday, starting at 10 o'clock in Buell at 3813 North, 1600 East. The Isidro Cortez retirement sale managed by the Bennett Boys Auction Service. No sale too big, no sale too small. The Bennett Boys, you better believe it. They sell them all. Absolutely. A reminder, Clark Kaufman asked for your vote to re-elect him as Idaho State Representative, District Seat 25B. Even more, Clark wants you to get out and exercise your right to vote. Clark Kaufman has served Idaho very well since 2012, serving you, serving all of Idaho. In order to logically keep our voices heard, Clark encourages you to vote yes on the constitutional amendment, changing the language to simply require the legislature to consist of 35 districts. Let's all do our part. Get out and vote. Paid for by the committee to re-elect Clark Kaufman for House Seat 25B, Debbie Kaufman, Treasurer. Oh, my. Oh, and we just had this other gentleman on the air not too long ago this morning, and that's, of course, our dear friend Fred Wood. Don't forget, go vote. We, the people, have the civic obligation to choose our leadership. Be sure and vote for the candidate of your choice on November 3rd. And this message paid by the re-elect District 27 Representative Fred Wood Committee, Steve Westfall, Treasurer. With that being said, we're going to send it back over to Sean at our main studio. I'll be back in about 3 minutes.
And now, back to Zeb at the Ranch on AM 1230 KVAR. To reach Zeb, call 436-2244 or toll free 1-866-927-4587. And now, here is Zeb Bell.
Don't forget, go vote November 3rd and vote yes for Amendment HJR4 and leave the number of legislative districts at 35, guaranteeing that our voices will be heard on all issues and also preserving rural representation. Paid for by Speaker of the House, Representative Scott Bedke, District 27, Sarah Bedke, Treasurer. I'm running a little bit late this morning, and I want to apologize to my next guest. He is so valuable to my program, and when he has the opportunity to come on, I can't wait to talk to him about the economy and what's going on close to the election. And I say good morning to public policy analyst and a professor of finance, Dr. Michael Busler. Sir, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Zeb. Thanks for having me. As you know, it's always my pleasure to be here.
Dr. Busler, every single time you're on the radio, you give me a feeling like there's hope, but yet if we don't start taking charge in our society, we're going to lose the values of being an American. And when I sat there last week and watched the debate with Joe Biden literally lying right to the national TV cameras that he was not going to try to end fracking and that he was not going to try to end the oil companies, and I've got stories He's right here on my desk, proving him a liar, that he did say those things. It must be frustrating for someone like you when you hear this as an economist. That would destroy our economy.
Yes, it certainly would. And as a matter of fact, when President Trump has done some of his rallies lately, he brings a big jumbotron with him and actually plays clips of Joe Biden saying that he is going to end fracking. So, look, the truth is that he doesn't favor fracking. He doesn't favor any of the fossil fuel industry. And he'd really like to end it as quickly as he can. Now, he knows, especially in states that rely on the energy industry for the strength of their economy, he knows in those states he can't come out and say it. So he has said he's going to end fracking, and he did say he was going to transition away from the fossil fuel industry. And I think that's a little closer to the truth. And that's impacting some of the voters in those states negatively. So, look, politicians, and Joe Biden certainly is a career politician, they say what they think they have to say to get elected, and then once they get into office, they're going to do what they're going to do and not worry about it till next election cycle.
Yeah, but Dr. Bussler, you are so great to have on this program because you and I have talked about this in the past. Here is a politician, Joe Biden, and he came right out about 6 weeks ago and said, yes, I'm going to raise your taxes. And I about fell out of my chair because here we are with the COVID-19. We're looking at massive business closures and lockdowns and people going out of work, people not knowing where their next meal is going to be bought or purchased. And then this man comes out and says that he's going to raise taxes, and he's in the lead supposedly in the polls.
So a couple things about that. He is going to raise taxes. Now, he says he's only going to raise taxes on people that make over $400,000 a year. The problem is that's only about 1.5% of the population. So he's obviously going to have to raise taxes a lot more to cover all of the things he wants to pay for: free health care for people, free college education, increased government spending in a whole lot of areas. And coming out of a recession, we just have to look at history. So we had, coming out of a recession in 08, 09, and Obama and Biden were the administration. What you should do to get out of a recession, economic policy should concentrate on growth. Get the economy growing again, get it healthy, and then we can tackle all these other problems you want to tackle. In order to have the economy grow, you need to keep tax rates low, and you need to let government get out of the way of business so they can move forward and grow the economy. After the 09 recession, they did exactly the opposite. They concentrated on curing perceived social injustices. It's an injustice everybody doesn't have health care, for instance. So they passed the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act had 21 new or increased taxes in it. So by passing that, you end up raising taxes, slows down the economic recovery. Then in 2011, the tax cuts passed under the Bush administration in 2001, lowered tax rates for everybody, only lasted for 10 years. So the tax cuts were set to expire in 2011. Obama made them permanent for everybody except the highest income earners. Their bracket went up by 10%. Well, that reduced capital formation. We have a capital-intensive economy. That tended to slow economic growth. So if Biden wins the election, and by the way, regardless of what the polls say, I don't think Biden is going to win. I think Trump is going to win, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But if Biden does win, he's going to get into office. He's going to raise taxes on everybody. He's going to do away with the Trump tax cuts. So we'll end up raising taxes, the worst thing to do during trying to come out of a recession because it'll slow economic growth. He'll also raise the corporate income tax from 21% to 28%. So it means corporations will be paying 1/3 more in taxes than they paid in the prior year. That, too, reduces capital formation and tends to slow economic growth. The worst thing you can do coming out of a recession is raise taxes. Either keep them the same and try to stimulate the economy some other way, or better yet, reduce taxes further if you can. And that doesn't mean that tax revenue will go down. In fact, when they passed the tax cut that went into effect in 2018, tax rates went down, but you had an increase in economic activity, an increase in income. Lower rate times more income yielded more tax revenue. So the tax cut did not add a penny to the deficit. They raised more revenue in 2018 than they did in 2017, and they raised more revenue in 2019 than they did in 2018. So just because you lower the rate doesn't mean the revenue is going to go down. Lowering the rate stimulates economic activity. You have more income to tax, and the total revenue actually went up. Now, let me say one more thing about what the polls are saying. Most of the polls are saying that Joe Biden is up by 6 points or 8 points or 10 points. So they're saying Biden's in the lead. I don't think those polls are accurate for a couple of reasons. Number one, in virtually all the polls, they have a biased sample. What does that mean? The sample has a greater percentage of Democrats than reflect the actual population. So you're going to get some bias away from Republicans and toward Democrats. Secondly, most of the polls sample registered voters. A couple of the polls, which are showing different results, the Trafalgar poll, for instance, they sample likely voters. So there's a difference between registered voters, someone's registered to vote, but a lot of people say, well, I think I'm going to vote for Biden, but I don't really care about it. I don't like either candidate, so I'm not going to vote at all. So you're putting them in the sample, and it doesn't really reflect the population. If you sample likely voters, people that are likely to vote, then I think you get a more accurate figure, and that's what some of these other polls have done that show Trump is fairly close. The third thing is, as we had in 2016, there are a number of people who support Trump who simply are afraid to say so because it's politically not correct to support Trump. I saw a study done the other day that said 62% of Trump supporters are afraid to even put a sign in their yard. So that indicates there are people that may be saying that they're not going to support Trump that really support him. My view is, right now, they're about even. I think both candidates have about 48% of the vote, and they're both at 48, so they're both about even. That leaves 4% of undecideds, and I think a big push this weekend and what President Trump is doing with these face-to-face rallies and some information that has come out about negative about Biden's financial ties with China, I think that undecided is going to swing toward President Trump, and I expect President Trump to win next Tuesday.
You know, now let me say this, and if I say something wrong here, please correct me. But when you look at what Trump has done since he was voted in as president and literally brought back with a handshake and an open door policy many, many businesses that had started doing much more of their business abroad out of the United States. If Biden wins this election, in my not really educated economic mind, I would think that we're running the risk of imposing a 28% corporate tax, having these people leave again and go to a more friendly place, and losing all the employment, and we could have devastating unemployment. This whole thing reeks of starting another depression.
I agree with you completely. So a lot of U.S. companies, big U.S. companies like Apple, they buy a little building somewhere. Apple bought theirs in Ireland. They call that their corporate headquarters. So they're now an Irish company, and they pay Irish income tax rates instead of the U.S. rates. Why did they do that? Because prior to 2018, the U.S. rates were about 35%. Ireland is only 24%. So they become an Irish company. So how did Trump fix that? He said, I'm going to drop the corporate rate down below what everybody has, down to 21. Now there's no advantage to leave the country. In fact, there's an advantage to come back to the country to pay a lower tax rate. So you're correct. If Biden raises the rate up to 28%, again, these companies are going to say, I don't want to pay that. I can pay 24% in Ireland or 22% somewhere else, and they're going to end up leaving the country, and not just their headquarters. They may start pushing more manufacturing to some other parts of the world where, again, the tax rates are lower. So raising the corporate tax rate because Biden wants corporations to pay their fair share, and he's never really defined what fair share means, but he wants them to pay their fair share, is counterproductive, and the higher rate may yield even less tax revenue, again, if companies leave and there's less income to be taxed.
Dr. Bussler, I've only got time for one more question, and I've asked you a semblance of this question in the past. Your students, when you're teaching finance at Stockton University, when you stand up this close to an election and start talking about a corporate tax rate of going up to 28%, possibly mass unemployment, the possible dissolution of our oil industry, what are these kids telling you?
Well, remember, I teach at a university, you may recall, that was started as a liberal arts college, so they still have a very strong liberal arts view, although the School of Business is a little different. Most of the time when I explain to them, and just last week I was going over how corporations make investment decisions. They take a look at how much it costs them and then how much cash flow they'll generate each year. By lowering the tax rate to 21%, increases their cash flow and makes those investments more appealing to them. By raising the tax rates, reduces cash flow, and those investments may not be profitable anymore, and that's what's going to slow economic growth. What I see is the students in class are sort of scratching their heads saying, well, that's not what the other professors were saying, but this does seem to make a little sense. So I see them starting to think about this, and that to me is what I'm supposed to be doing. Because in college, aside from specific skills, we're supposed to be teaching critical thinking skills. So here's all the information. You're supposed to know how to figure this out for yourself and make a decision. So when I give them this additional information, I see them scratching their head a little bit, thinking that maybe they've been looking at this the wrong way.
We have a caller with a quick question. I've only got 1 minute left. Caller, real fast. You're on the air. Go, please.
I only need 15 seconds. Ronald Reagan was saying that corporations don't pay taxes, they collect taxes. I want to know what your guest thinks of that assessment. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Bussler, please.
That's exactly right. Corporations don't pay taxes. They collect taxes. What does that mean? If they're going to do something and it's profitable, it's got to be profitable after the taxes are paid. So if you put a tax on a corporation, it's going to reduce the cash flow. They're going to have to recover that by raising the price so that the project is still profitable, or the project won't be there. So you're right. Corporations only collect taxes. They don't really pay the taxes themselves. They pass it on to consumers.
I wish I had more time. I absolutely relish every opportunity I have to have you on the program. Dr. Michael Bussler, and he's a public policy analyst and professor of finance at Stockton University. I mean this when I say this. Come back soon. God bless. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zeb. It's always my pleasure. Look forward to doing it again.
All right. Thank you very much. Wow. He makes it so plain to understand what's going on economically. I said this before a long time ago when he was on my program. I wished I could have had him as my economics teacher in high school. I really appreciate that, man. Hey, don't forget, vote November 3rd for an Idaho representative that has worked very hard to help preserve and enhance our agricultural industry, protect our resources, and stand firm for family values. I'm talking about Lori Likely, State Representative, District 25A. Lori knows what is important for Idaho to grow and prosper, and she wants your vote November 3rd. Lori Likely for District 25A, paid for, Likely for Idaho, Bill Likely, Treasurer. Oh, boy. Are you hungry? Are you hungry? Well, I am too, and I know a great place that you can go. We all should gather at Edis Cafe. Oh, it's right across from the golf course in Burley. You know where it is. I've had a lot of people tell me many, many years ago what a great place this is. 144 East Highway 81 in Burley. The number to call, 878-2248. They're open Tuesdays through Thursdays, 11 to 8, Fridays and Saturdays, 11 to 9. And they do catering, and they've got a great big room to have everybody in and enjoy great meals. From hamburgers all the way to steaks. The food is tremendous and the service is great at Edis Cafe. 144 East Highway 81 in Burley. Again, that number, 878-2248. We had better get to the weather, and the weather is brought to you this hour by Scarro's Meats. Hello, Don Scarrow and the crew over at Jerome. Where are they located? Thought you'd never ask. They're over at 331 North Road, Jerome. Telephone number to call, 324-7657, or you can go to their website and check out all the delicious meats at scarrowsmeats.com. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's ham season and it's turkey season, and they've got everything over there. All the tri-tips, all the buckboard bacon, all the different flavors of bacon and sausage, everything for you and your dining enjoyment at Scarrow's Meats in Jerome. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Still on a slight warming trend as we make our way towards the weekend, and here's a look at your weather forecast for today. We are expecting sunny skies, a little bit of a breeze out of the west at about 5 miles an hour, looking at a high of 56. Tonight, mostly clear, low of 26. Tomorrow, sunny and 61 with an overnight low of 27. Looks like 67 by Friday. Mostly clear for Friday night with a low of 32. And then for the weekend, Saturday, sunny and 58 and 63 for Sunday. That's a look at your weather for Deb.
Thank you very much, Gina. I appreciate it. And the weather, of course, brought to you this hour by Scarrow's Meats. 331 North Road, Jerome. That telephone number, 324-7657. And it is so true. They are changing the way we eat, one delicious bite at a time. Tomorrow on the program, boy, have we got some home runs tomorrow. We've got, of course, the Chamber of Commerce report with Penny Main, and we're going to have Nick on with Burley PT, physical therapy. We're going to have one of my favorite guests from Beantown back in Boston. Gary Goldman's going to be on the phone. And at 10:30 tomorrow, we're going to be talking about HJR4 with the Speaker of the House, Representative Scott Bedke. That's tomorrow on Zeb at the Ranch. We really appreciate our major sponsor. Oh my goodness, these folks are good, and service is the key word. I'm talking about your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations. Now, don't be lulled into a false sense of security with the weather forecast the next couple of days being nice. We're going to be seeing a lot of yuck and muck on the roads and snow and everything else, so be ready for whatever the roads throw at you with all the tires, all the tread designs, all the sizes for your vehicles. You get in there and check it out today. And don't forget to the best in brake service, front end alignment, shocks and struts, and, yep, you know where I'm headed, batteries. Make sure that your battery can do the job. If not, they've got a battery just for your vehicle. Stop in and see them today. James and Buell, Dan on Pole Line in Twin Falls, Lane and Rupert, Mike and Jerome, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, the Twist family in Paul, Trent on Overland in Burley. All 7 locations, the best of your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Well, that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up and put it back in the box for today. And we always end the program by saying the way things were are the way things ought to be. And the 4 words that mean the most to me, in God we trust. I certainly hope that you have a wonderful day. And then tomorrow morning at 8:06, we'll start it all over again. Zeb at the Ranch on K-Bar, 12:30 a.m. and then streaming all over the world on ZebBell.com. You have a great day.